The wind screamed through the mountain pass like something dying. Elena Morales gripped the steering wheel of her 15-year-old Subaru so hard her knuckles turned white, ice crystals forming on the windshield faster than the failing wipers could clear them. In the passenger seat, her daughter Mia, just turned 9, clutched a stuffed bear that had seen better days, its one remaining eye fixed on the white chaos swallowing the road ahead. They shouldn't have been driving. The storm warnings had been clear, urgent, deadly. But desperation makes dangerous choices feel inevitable. Elena had exactly $247 in her checking account, 3 days until Christmas, and a utility shutoff notice that had arrived that morning like a punch to the gut. When she'd seen the county auction listing for the old Whispering Pines ski resort, abandoned since 2015, starting bid just $1,200, something had shifted in her chest. Not hope exactly, more like the absence of other options. The auction had ended at noon. She'd bid $1,500, her entire rent payment, against a room of silent skeptics who'd let her take it without competition. The property manager had handed her the keys with an expression somewhere between pity and judgment, warning her about structural damage, about the harsh mountain winters, about the reason nobody had touched the place in 8 years. Now, driving through a blizzard that had come out of nowhere, Elena wondered if the universe was sending a message she'd been too desperate to hear. "Mama, I can't see anything," Mia whispered, her voice small and frightened. "We should stop." Elena wanted to agree, but there was nowhere to stop. They were on a narrow mountain road, rock face on one side, a drop into darkness on the other, no shoulder, no turnoff, just forward momentum and prayer. "We're almost there, baby," she lied, having no idea how much farther the resort was. The GPS had lost signal 20 minutes ago. The headlights caught something through the snow, a shape, solid and darker than the storm. Elena slammed the brakes. The Subaru skidded sideways, tires finding no purchase on ice, the world rotating in slow motion. Mia screamed. Elena yanked the wheel, overcorrected, felt the rear end swing wide toward the cliff edge. Then they stopped. Somehow, impossibly, they stopped. The car sat at an angle across the road, engine still running, both of them breathing hard and fast. "Are you okay?" Elena gasped, reaching for her daughter. Mia nodded, tears streaming, still clutching the bear. Through the windshield, barely visible through the storm, Elena could make out what they'd nearly hit. A gate, massive and ornate, flanked by stone pillars that rose like sentries from the snow. Beyond it, a long driveway disappeared into whiteness. The sign on the gate was barely readable, metal letters crusted with ice. Whispering Pines Resort. They'd made it. Elena felt something between relief and terror. She managed to maneuver the car through the open gate, surprised it wasn't locked, and started up the driveway. The Subaru's tires spun on the incline, caught, pushed forward. The storm intensified, wind howling like it was personally offended by their presence. Then, through the horizontal snow, a building emerged. The main lodge of Whispering Pines Resort rose 4 stories high, a massive timber and stone structure that had once been magnificent. Even in decay, even shrouded in storm and abandonment, it commanded awe. Massive windows, most still intact, reflected nothing but darkness. A wraparound deck sagged on one side, buried under 8 years of neglect and tonight's accumulating snow. The peaked roof, designed to shed avalanches, seemed to claw at the storm-darkened sky. Elena parked as close to the entrance as she dared and turned off the engine. The sudden silence was oppressive, broken only by wind and Mia's quiet breathing. "Is this ours?" Mia asked, staring up at the enormous building. "Is this really ours?" Elena looked down at the key ring the auction house had given her, 3 keys on a faded leather tag stamped with the resort's logo. "Yeah, baby. This is really ours." She had no idea what that meant. No plan beyond survival, beyond getting out of the storm and figuring out tomorrow when tomorrow came. They climbed out into waist-deep snow for Mia, knee-deep for Elena. The cold was immediate and brutal, cutting through their inadequate coats. Elena grabbed their emergency bag from the trunk, the one that held flashlights, blankets, and the granola bars that were supposed to be Christmas presents before reality had other ideas. The front entrance was a set of double doors, 10 feet tall, solid wood with iron fixtures. Elena tried the first key. It didn't fit. Second key. The lock turned smoothly, Too smoothly for a building that had supposedly sat empty for 8 years. The door swung open with a groan that sounded almost human. Darkness swallowed them. Elena clicked on her flashlight, the beam cutting through dust and stale air. They stepped inside, and she pushed the door closed behind them, shutting out the storm's rage. The sudden quiet was disorienting. Mia pressed against Elena's side as they stood in what had once been the grand lobby. The flashlight revealed pieces of former glory. A massive stone fireplace, 20 feet high, its chimney disappearing into shadows above. Leather furniture, covered in dust but surprisingly intact. A front desk with cubbyholes behind it where room keys had once hung. Everything frozen in time, like the resort had closed mid-season and simply never opened again. Which, Elena knew from her hasty research, was almost exactly what had happened. The resort had shut down in February 2015 after its owner, Marcus Whitfield, a real estate developer who'd poured his fortune into the property, had vanished. Not died, not fled to avoid creditors. Vanished. His car had been found in the parking lot, engine running, driver's door open, footprints leading into the woods, and then just stopping. Search teams had combed the mountain for weeks. They'd found nothing. The resort had been in legal limbo ever since, tied up in missing person proceedings and creditor disputes, slowly deteriorating until the county finally seized it for back taxes and put it up for auction at a price that reflected its cursed reputation. "It's so big," Mia whispered, her voice echoing through the empty lobby. "Where do we sleep?" Elena swung the flashlight around, looking for somewhere defensible, somewhere they could be warm and safe until morning. The beam caught a sign pointing toward what had been the resort manager's office. She led Mia down a hallway lined with framed photos of the resort in its glory days. Skiers on perfect powder, families around the fireplace, the slopes lit up for night skiing like stars had fallen to earth. The manager's office was small, with a desk and filing cabinets, and, mercifully, a couch that looked more comfortable than anything Elena had slept on in months. She spread their blankets while Mia explored with her own small flashlight, opening drawers, finding old resort brochures and employee schedules from February 2015. "Mama, look," Mia said, pulling something from a drawer. A framed photo of a man in his 50s, handsome, confident, standing in front of the lodge with his arms spread wide like he was showing off his kingdom. On the back, written in marker, Marcus Whitfield, opening day, December 2014. "That's the man who used to own this place," Elena said softly. Before he disappeared, Mia studied the photo with the intense focus children bring to mysteries. "Where did he go?" "Nobody knows, baby." Elena took the photo gently and set it face down on the desk. "But that was a long time ago. Right now we need to sleep. Tomorrow we'll explore properly." They huddled together on the couch under their blankets, listening to the storm rage outside, to the building creak and settle around them. Elena thought about the $1,500 she'd just spent, her entire rent payment gone on a property she couldn't afford to heat or repair that would probably cost tens of thousands just to make habitable. She'd made a terrible mistake. A desperate, foolish, terrible mistake. But they were out of a storm. They had shelter. Tomorrow would come with its own problems, but tonight they were safe. She was almost asleep when Mia spoke into the darkness. "Mama, do you hear that?" Elena listened. Beyond the wind, beneath the building's groans, there was something else. A low humming, mechanical, steady, like something was running. "Old pipes," Elena murmured, though she didn't believe it. "Buildings make noise. Go to sleep." But she lay awake long after Mia's breathing deepened into sleep, listening to that impossible sound. A building abandoned for 8 years shouldn't have power, shouldn't have anything running. Yet somewhere in the darkness above or below them, something was working, waiting, keeping time in the emptiness. Morning came gray and suffocated by snow. Elena woke to find Mia already up, nose pressed against the office window, watching the storm that had somehow intensified overnight. "We're snowed in," her daughter said, not frightened exactly, but concerned in that practical way children have. "Look!" Elena joined her at the window. Snow had drifted against the building's lower level, easily 10 feet high in places. Their Subaru was completely buried, just a vague hump in the white landscape. The driveway they'd struggled up last night was indistinguishable from the rest of the mountain. Even if they wanted to leave, even if the car would start, they weren't going anywhere. "Well," Elena said, forcing brightness into her voice, "looks like we're having a snow day. Want to explore our new castle?" They ate granola bars for breakfast and set out into the lodge with both flashlights and a growing sense of surreal adventure. The daylight filtering through windows revealed details the darkness had hidden. The lobby's stone fireplace had intricate carvings, bears and elk and mountains rendered in remarkable detail. The leather furniture was dust-covered but undamaged, no sign of vandalism or looting. The check-in desk held a computer system ancient by modern standards but intact. Behind it, a wall of cubbyholes where room keys should have hung. Most were empty, but a few still held keys with wooden tags attached, room numbers burned into the wood. "Can we pick our room?" Mia asked, eyes bright with excitement. "Like we're guests." "We're better than guests," Elena said. "We're the owners. Pick any room you want." They explored the first floor, finding a massive dining room with tables still set like the staff had expected guests who never came. The kitchen was industrial-sized, stainless steel and commercial equipment that would have cost hundreds of thousands when new. Everything was coated in dust but surprisingly intact. Elena opened a walk-in freezer, expecting empty shelves or rot. Instead, she found it still cold, not freezing, but holding temperature above 32 degrees. Impossible for a building without power. She checked the light switches throughout the first floor. Nothing. No electricity. Yet that mechanical humming continued, emanating from somewhere deeper in the building. "Mama, can we go upstairs?" Mia called from the lobby. "I want to see the rooms." They climbed the grand staircase, its log railings still solid despite years of neglect. The second floor held guest rooms, maybe 20 of them, each decorated in rustic luxury. Beds with thick quilts, bathrooms with jacuzzi tubs, balconies overlooking slopes that were now just white expanses disappearing into storm. Mia picked a corner room with windows on 2 walls, offering views of both the mountain and the valley below, though currently those views were just walls of falling snow. The room was larger than their entire apartment back in Denver, with a king bed, sitting area, and a fireplace that actually worked if Elena could find wood. "This is mine," Mia declared, setting her bear on the bed. "Can we really stay here?" Elena sat beside her, pulling her daughter close. "For now, yes. I don't know what happens after the storm, baby. I don't know if we can afford to keep this place. But right now, it's ours and we're going to make the best of it." They spent the morning exploring, finding 30 guest rooms in total across the second and third floors, a games room with a pool table and old arcade machines, a small gym, a spa area with treatment rooms, and what looked like a hot tub system. The fourth floor held what must have been luxury suites, larger rooms with premium amenities, and at the far end, a locked door marked private. Elena tried all 3 keys from the auction house. None worked. "Must be the owner's quarters," she muttered. "Maybe there's another key somewhere." By afternoon, the storm showed no signs of letting up, and Elena's phone had lost all signal. They were completely isolated, cut off from the world, alone in this massive building that seemed to exist in its own pocket of time. She found a utility closet on the first floor and was surprised to discover it wasn't completely empty. Previous owners, or perhaps county workers, doing assessments had left supplies. Industrial flashlights with fresh batteries, emergency candles, even some canned goods and bottled water. She also found something else, a circuit breaker panel. She opened it, expecting everything to be off. Most switches were in the off position, but 3 were flipped to on. Main generator backup, lower-level systems, emergency lighting. Elena stared at the switches. A building abandoned for 8 years didn't maintain generator power. Generators needed fuel, maintenance, someone to keep them running. Yet according to this panel, 3 systems were active. The humming she'd heard made terrible sense now. Something was running in the lower level, had been running for years, drawing power from a generator that somehow hadn't run out of fuel. "Mia," she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. "Come here, baby. Stay close to me." Her daughter appeared from the lobby where she'd been examining the old resort brochures. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Elena lied. "I want to check something in the basement. I need you with me." They found the stairs down near the kitchen, a concrete stairwell that descended into darkness. Elena's flashlight revealed a space very different from the rustic luxury above. This was purely functional: cement floors and walls, exposed pipes and electrical conduits, storage areas filled with stacked chairs and folded tables. The humming was louder here, directional, coming from the back of the basement, past the storage areas, toward what looked like newer construction. Elena moved slowly, Mia's hand gripped tight in hers. They passed boiler rooms and mechanical spaces, a laundry area with industrial washers, storage cages filled with linens and supplies. The basement seemed to extend far beyond the footprint of the building above, carved deeper into the mountain itself. At the back, the corridor narrowed and turned. Elena rounded the corner and stopped. A door, steel, industrial strength, completely out of place in a ski resort. It had a keypad lock, modern, LED display still lit, still powered. As they stood there, the LED flashed from red to green and back to red. Active, waiting for a code. Elena approached slowly, heart hammering. She pressed her ear against the door. Beyond it, the humming was even louder, accompanied by other sounds. Air circulation, maybe machinery, definitely something that required power and had been maintained. "What's in there?" Mia whispered. "I don't know," Elena admitted. She tried the door handle. Locked. She examined the keypad. 6-digit code. Thousands of combinations. No way to guess. She turned to leave, then noticed something. On the wall next to the keypad, someone had scratched numbers into the concrete. Faint, barely visible, but definitely there. 021415. February 14th, 2015. Valentine's Day. The day Marcus Whitfield disappeared. Elena's hands shook as she entered the code. She didn't know why she was doing this, didn't know what she expected to find. Part of her screamed to walk away, to take Mia back upstairs, to leave whatever secrets this place held buried in darkness. But a larger part, the part that had spent 6 years scraping by, the part that had gambled their rent money on an impossible property, that part needed to know. The keypad beeped. The LED turned solid green. Something clicked inside the door, heavy mechanical locks releasing. The door swung inward on well-oiled hinges, revealing light. Actual light, fluorescent, harsh and bright after the darkness. Elena stepped through, pulling Mia with her, into a corridor carved from solid rock. The walls were smooth, precision-cut, reinforced with steel beams every 10 feet. This wasn't part of the original resort. This had been added later, secretly, expensively. The corridor extended about 50 feet before opening into a larger space. Elena could see the edges of it in the light, could hear the machinery louder now, could feel air circulation, temperature-controlled and clean. They walked forward, flashlights forgotten, because the fluorescent lights made them unnecessary. At the end of the corridor, they emerged into a vault. That was the only word for it. A space carved from the mountain, maybe 40 feet square, the walls lined with industrial shelving units. On those shelves, stacked in neat rows, bundles wrapped in waterproof plastic. Hundreds of bundles, maybe thousands. Elena approached the nearest shelf with legs that barely supported her. She picked up one bundle, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She peeled back the plastic carefully. Inside, cash. $100 bills bound in stacks, each stack appearing to contain 100 bills. $10,000 per stack. She counted quickly. Each bundle held 10 stacks. $100,000 per bundle. Her vision grayed at the edges. She sat down hard on the concrete floor, that bundle of cash in her lap, staring at the shelves that held enough money to change lives, to change everything, to solve every problem she'd ever had and create ones she couldn't begin to imagine. "Mama!" Mia's voice was small, frightened by Elena's reaction. "What is it? What did you find?" Elena couldn't speak, couldn't form words. She just pulled her daughter close and held her while her mind tried to process the impossible. She bought an abandoned ski resort for $1,500. She'd found a hidden vault that held more money than she could count in her head. Millions. Tens of millions. Maybe more. But she knew, even in that first moment of shock, that this wasn't treasure. This was something else. Something dangerous. People didn't hide this much cash in secret vaults carved into mountains unless the money was wrong. unless having it meant trouble that made blizzards and poverty look like mercy. Marcus Whitfield had vanished without a trace. Now Elena understood he hadn't fled from debts or failed business ventures. He'd been protecting this, or running from whoever wanted it. And that someone, whoever they were, might not know the vault existed. Or they might be watching, waiting, circling even now while she sat in the heart of a mountain with her daughter and enough cash to get them both killed. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The air circulation system cycled on. And somewhere above them, the storm buried them deeper in snow and isolation. Elena had come to the mountain looking for shelter and found a secret that would force her to choose between the safety of silence and the danger of truth. Between the life she had, barely surviving, and the one this money could buy if she lived long enough to spend it. She looked down at her daughter, at her innocent face and trust-filled eyes. Then she looked at the shelves stretching away into the vault's depths. This was just the beginning. The real question wasn't what she'd found. It was what she was going to do about it. Because one thing was certain, nobody hid this much money in a mountain and just forgot about it. Someone knew. Someone had been waiting 8 years for the right moment to come back. And Elena, desperate and broke and snowed in with her 9-year-old daughter, had just stumbled into a secret people killed for. The only question was whether she'd survive long enough to figure out what that secret was. Elena sat on the cold concrete floor, Mia pressed against her side, both of them staring at the impossible wealth surrounding them. The bundle in her lap felt heavy, wrong, like holding something that belonged to someone else, to some other life. She forced herself to stand, to think practically despite the spinning in her head. "Baby, I need you to wait here by the door," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Don't touch anything. Just sit right here and hold your bear, okay?" Mia nodded, wide-eyed, sensing the gravity without fully understanding it. Elena moved deeper into the vault, methodically now, cataloging what she saw. The shelving units were organized into sections, each marked with small metal placards. The largest section, taking up 2 entire walls, was labeled simply primary. She did rough math, counting bundles and multiplying, losing track, starting over. Conservative estimate, $200 million. Maybe more. But money wasn't all she found. At the back of the vault sat a heavy safe, the old-fashioned kind with a combination dial. She tried the handle, expecting it to be locked. It turned smoothly. Inside, filing boxes, at least a dozen of them, packed with documents. She pulled one out and opened it. Bank statements, dozens of them, from accounts at institutions she recognized and many she didn't. Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Luxembourg. Offshore accounts and names she didn't recognize, but all seemingly connected to one source, Whitfield Development Group. Elena grabbed another box. This one held contracts, purchase agreements for properties all over the western United States. But something was off about them. Dates that didn't match, prices that seemed inflated or deflated depending on the document, signatures that looked similar but not quite identical. The third box made her stomach drop. Loan documents from banks, venture capital firms, private investors. Huge loans, tens of millions each, all secured against properties whose values seemed questionable based on the purchase agreements she'd just seen. Marcus Whitfield hadn't just been a resort owner. He'd been running something much larger, much more complicated. She pulled out her phone from habit, remembered there was no signal, and instead started photographing documents with the camera. She didn't understand most of what she was reading, but instinct told her it was important that these papers explained why so much cash sat in a mountain vault. The fourth box held something different. A ledger, handwritten in neat script, dates going back to 2010 through early 2015. She opened it to a random page and started reading. Morrison Construction, $2.3 million. Actual cost $900,000. Difference offshore, account 4472. And another, Valley Pine Development, appraised $8 million, actual value $3 million. Loan secured $7 million. Difference offshore, account 4472. Page after page of the same pattern. Inflated construction costs, inflated property values, loans secured against those inflated values, and the difference between real and reported numbers flowing somewhere labeled offshore. Elena understood enough to recognize fraud. Massive, systematic fraud. Marcus Whitfield had been inflating costs and values, borrowing against fake numbers, and siphoning the difference into accounts nobody could trace. The resort itself had probably been part of the scheme. Built for far less than he'd claimed, financed for far more than it was worth. And when someone, somewhere, had started asking questions, when the house of cards had begun to wobble, he'd liquidated everything, converted it to cash, and hidden it here. Then he'd vanished. But not before sealing the evidence along with the money. She found his journal in the last box, a leather-bound book with entries that grew increasingly frantic. January 2015. Auditors are coming. Spencer knows something's wrong. Need to finish the transfers before they look too deep. February 2015. It's done. All of it converted, all of it hidden. They'll tear apart the resort looking for answers, but they won't find the tunnel entrance. The ice tunnel system was my backup plan all along. Nobody knows it connects to the vault. Ice tunnel. Elena's mind raced. Ski resorts sometimes had ice caves or storage areas carved into the mountain for various purposes. She'd seen mention in the resort brochures of a natural ice tunnel that guests could tour. But Whitfield had used it for something else entirely. Had extended it, connected it to this vault, created a secret space within a secret space. The final entry in the journal was dated February 14, 2015. They're here. Black SUVs, men in suits. Not auditors. Something else. Something worse. I should run, but there's nowhere to go. The money's safe. The evidence is safe. Maybe that's enough. If you're reading this, if you found this place, I'm probably dead. Don't make the same mistakes I made. Don't think money can solve everything. It just makes the problems bigger. Elena closed the journal with shaking hands. Marcus Whitfield had stolen hundreds of millions, maybe more. He defrauded banks, investors, contractors. He built an empire on lies and inflated numbers. And when it all came crashing down, he tried to hide his fortune and his evidence in a mountain. Someone had come looking for him that Valentine's Day 8 years ago. The last time anyone saw him alive. "Mama, can we go now?" Mia's voice, small and scared, cut through Elena's spinning thoughts. This place is cold and scary. Elena stood quickly, stuffing the journal into her jacket. "Yes, baby. Let's go." They left the vault, Elena pulling the door closed behind them. The locks engaged with heavy clicks. The keypad flashed back to red. Locked. Secret. Hidden. They climbed back up to the first floor, both of them silent, processing in their different ways. Elena's mind wouldn't stop racing. She bought a resort that was part of a massive fraud scheme. A secret vault under it held the stolen money and evidence that could destroy lives, reputations, corporations. Marcus Whitfield was dead, almost certainly, killed by whoever had come for him that February day. And those same people might still be looking for what he'd hidden. Or they might think it was lost forever, buried in a failed resort, hidden so well that 8 years of searching had found nothing. But now Elena owned the property. Her name on the deed. Public record. If anyone was still watching, still waiting, they'd know. They'd come. She found herself pacing the lobby, Mia curled up in an armchair by the cold fireplace, watching her mother with concern. The storm continued outside, snow piling higher, the world shrinking to just this building, just this moment. Elena knew she had choices to make, impossible choices. She could seal the vault, pretend she'd never seen it, try to flip the property quickly to someone who'd never find the hidden room. Walk away with her $1,500 loss and her life intact. Or she could take the money. Not all of it, maybe, but enough to change her life, to give Mia everything she'd never had. Medical care, education, security. They could disappear, start over somewhere far from here, live quietly on stolen wealth. But she'd read the journal. She'd seen the ledger. That money represented families ruined by inflated construction costs, investors defrauded, banks stolen from, ordinary people whose pensions or savings had been tied up in Marcus Whitfield's schemes. Taking it would make her complicit, make her a thief, no better than the man who'd hidden it. The third option was the most dangerous. Go public. Contact authorities. Turn over the evidence. Expose the fraud. Face whatever came. The vault would be emptied by federal agents. The money would go toward restitution, if possible. Justice, messy and imperfect, would be served. And Elena would be in the center of it, exposed, visible, a target for anyone who'd rather the truth stayed buried. She thought about Mia, about keeping her daughter safe. Thought about the utility cut-off notice, the eviction threat, the 6 years of barely surviving. Thought about integrity and exhaustion, and the question of whether you could really choose principles when your child needed stability more than your conscience needed cleansing. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, shocked to see a single bar of signal had appeared. Must be a gap in the storm. A text message loaded, timestamp from 3 hours ago, but just now delivered. Unknown number. Know you bought the resort. Bad investment. Willing to buy it. From you immediately. $50,000 cash. Save yourself trouble. We'll contact you when storm clears. Elena stared at the message, ice sliding down her spine. 3 hours. They'd known she bought the property 3 hours after the auction. While she was still driving up the mountain, someone had already been tracking her, making plans, preparing an offer. $50,000 for a property she'd paid $1,500 for. A property they claimed was worthless. Why offer so much unless they knew what was hidden here? She screenshot the message, then watched as her signal bar disappeared again. Alone. Cut off. But not forgotten. Not by whoever had sent that text. They knew where she was. Knew she was trapped by the storm. Might already be coming. Or might be waiting for the roads to clear, patient after 8 years, confident that one broke single mother wouldn't find what trained investigators couldn't. But she had found it, and now she had to decide what that meant. Elena walked to the massive windows overlooking the valley. Through the storm, she could see nothing but white. The world had disappeared. Only this building, this moment, this choice existed. Behind her, Mia hummed softly, some song from school, oblivious to the weight of decisions being made. In her jacket pocket, Marcus Whitfield's journal pressed against her ribs. His last words, "Don't make the same mistakes I made. Don't think money can solve everything." But he'd been a criminal running from consequences. Elena was something different. She was a mother trying to survive, trying to give her daughter a chance. That had to count for something, didn't it? Or was that just how people justified terrible choices by telling themselves the ends mattered more than the means? The storm howled against the windows. The building creaked around them. And somewhere in the depths below, in a vault that shouldn't exist, $200 million waited in the dark, along with evidence that could unravel lives and destroy carefully constructed lies. Elena had bought a ski resort for $1,500. She'd inherited a war she didn't understand, hadn't asked for, couldn't walk away from without consequences. The only question was which consequences she could live with, and whether she'd survive long enough to find out. Night came early behind the storm. Elena found wood in a storage area and built a fire in the lobby's massive fireplace, surprised when it drew perfectly despite years of disuse. She and Mia sat close to the flames, eating canned soup heated over the fire, trying to pretend this was an adventure rather than crisis and isolation. "Tell me about Christmas," Mia said quietly, poking at her soup. "Will Santa know where to find us?" Elena's throat tightened. Christmas was 4 days away. She had no gifts, no tree, no way to give her daughter even a fraction of what she deserved. Unless she went back down to that vault. Unless she took just enough cash to change one Christmas, one life, one future. Who would know? Who would care about $100,000 out of $200 million? "Santa always knows," Elena said softly, the light tasting like ash. "He's magic that way." They slept near the fire that night, Elena keeping it fed, unwilling to let darkness reclaim the building. Around midnight, she heard something that made her sit up fast. A sound outside, mechanical, out of place in the storm. An engine, distant but approaching. She moved to the window, keeping low, peering out into darkness pierced only by her Subaru's buried shape in the wind-blown snow. Then she saw them. Lights, 2 sets, crawling up the buried driveway. Snowmobiles, 2 of them, moving slowly but steadily, riders bundled against the storm. They stopped near the entrance. The engines cut. In the sudden quiet, Elena heard voices, male, muffled by wind and walls. She grabbed Mia, who'd woken at the noise, and pulled her toward the manager's office. "Be very quiet," she whispered. "Someone's outside. We're going to hide. Are they bad people?" Mia's eyes were huge in the firelight. Elena wanted to say no, to reassure her, but she was done lying. I don't know, baby. But we're being safe. They crouched in the office, door closed, lights off, while heavy footsteps crunched through snow outside. Someone tried the front door. Found it locked. Moved around the building, trying other entrances. Elena had locked everything she could find, but a building this size had dozens of potential entry points. After 10 minutes, she heard glass breaking. Side window, she thought. By the dining room. They were coming in. Elena's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. No signal. She couldn't call for help even if she wanted to. She looked around the office frantically, finding nothing useful as a weapon. Then she remembered the circuit breakers. She could cut all the power, plunge the building into darkness, make it harder for whoever was searching. But that would also cut power to the vault. The generators would stop. Someone monitoring remotely would know something had changed. She left the breakers alone. The footsteps were inside now, moving through the lobby. 2 people, she counted. Maybe more. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness beyond the office door. Place is huge, a man's voice said. Could take hours to search properly. We're not here to search, another voice replied. We're here to make contact, verify she's actually staying here. Boss wants to know if she found anything before we make the approach. They moved past the office, heading deeper into the building. Elena waited, barely breathing. Mia clutched against her chest. After 5 minutes, the voices faded. After 10, she heard the snowmobile engine start again. They were leaving. She waited another 30 minutes before moving, making sure it wasn't a trick, that someone hadn't stayed behind. Finally, she crept to the window and looked out. The snowmobiles were gone, their tracks already filling with fresh snow. But the message was clear. They knew she was here. They'd come during the worst storm in years to confirm it, which meant whatever was in that vault, whoever wanted it, they weren't giving up. They were just being patient. Elena returned to the lobby, rebuilt the fire, held her daughter until the trembling stopped. Those were the bad people, weren't they? Mia whispered. People looking for something. Yeah, baby. They're looking for something. Did they find it? No. And they're not going to. Elena said it with more confidence than she felt. By morning, the storm had finally broken. Weak sunlight filtered through clouds, illuminating a transformed landscape. Snow reached the second-floor windows in places. The driveway was completely impassable. They were trapped for days, maybe longer, until the county sent plows or the snow melted enough for vehicles. But the lack of storm meant something else. Cell signal. Elena's phone chimed repeatedly as delayed messages and calls downloaded. The first was from the property manager who'd sold her the resort. Miss Morales, this is Janet Keller from County Auctions. I need to speak with you urgently about the Whispering Pines property. There's been some questions raised about liens and previous ownership. Please call me immediately. The second was from an unknown number, different from yesterday's text. Miss Morales, my name is Robertson, attorney with Whitfield Properties, LLC. I represent Marcus Whitfield's estate. We need to discuss the resort property you purchased. There are some materials on site that belong to the estate. We'd like to arrange access. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. The third message was a voicemail, also from an unknown number. Elena played it on speaker, stomach nodding as a smooth, professional voice filled the quiet office. Miss Morales, my name is Thomas Brennan. I'm a private investigator working on behalf of multiple creditor families affected by the Whitfield fraud case. We believe there may be evidence on the resort property that could help locate assets for restitution. I understand you're snowed in, but when you're able, I'd very much like to meet. This could be worth your while financially and would help a lot of people who were hurt. Please call. 3 different parties, all suddenly interested in the resort, all making contact within hours of her purchase. Elena felt the walls closing in. She called Janet Keller first, the property manager being the least threatening. The woman answered immediately. Miss Morales, thank God. Are you safe? The storm reports said the pass was closed. We're fine. Snowed in but fine. What's this about liens? Janet hesitated. After you left yesterday, I had 3 different inquiries about the property. People wanting to know who bought it, asking for your contact information, which of course I can't provide. But one of them was an attorney claiming there's an active lien against the property from the Whitfield estate. Says the sale should have been delayed, pending resolution. You didn't mention any liens at the auction. Elena's voice was sharp. Because there weren't any on file. This lien supposedly was filed the day after you bought the property. Conveniently after you couldn't back out. Janet's tone suggested she didn't believe the lien was legitimate. I wanted to warn you. Someone's playing games, trying to cloud your ownership. You might need a lawyer. With what money? Elena thought bitterly. She thanked Janet and ended the call. The other messages she ignored for now. Instead, she spent the morning planning. If she was going to survive this, if she was going to protect Mia and do the right thing, she needed information. Needed to understand exactly what Marcus Whitfield had stolen from whom and who wanted it back badly enough to kill. The vault held answers. The documents she'd seen were just the beginning. She needed to go through everything, photograph it all, understand the full scope before deciding her next move. But she couldn't do that with Mia present. Couldn't risk her daughter being anywhere near that evidence if someone broke in again. "Baby," she said, sitting down with Mia after lunch. "I need to do some boring grown-up work. You know that room you picked yesterday? Can you stay there and play for a while? Draw me some pictures of our Christmas castle." Mia nodded, sensing the seriousness. "Is it about the bad people?" "It's about making sure we're safe," Elena said carefully. "Which means I need to understand some things about this place. And I need you somewhere safe while I do that." She settled Mia in the second-floor room with her crayons and paper, locked the door from the outside for safety, and pocketed the key. Then she descended to the basement alone, her phone fully charged, camera ready. The vault was exactly as she'd left it. She spent 4 hours going through every document, photographing every page, every contract, every bank statement. The scale of Whitfield's fraud became clearer with each box. He'd stolen from over 200 investors, many of them small-time, retirement savings, nest eggs, money that represented dreams and security for ordinary families. He'd inflated construction costs, paid contractors half of what he claimed, and pocketed the difference. He'd had properties appraised by appraisers he secretly paid off, then used those inflated values to secure massive loans. When properties inevitably failed to perform as promised, he declared bankruptcy, walked away, and left creditors holding worthless assets. The resort itself had been his final, grandest scheme. Built for around $20 million, he claimed costs of $80 million, borrowed $90 million against it, and when the music stopped, he'd liquidated everything he could into cash before anyone realized how deep the fraud went. But he'd kept records, either as insurance or because he couldn't help himself. He documented everything. Every fake appraisal, every inflated invoice, every kickback and payoff. The evidence in this vault could unravel his entire network, could potentially recover funds for victims, could put accomplices in prison. If it reached the right hands. If Elena was brave enough to make sure it did. She found one more thing in the last box. A letter, addressed to no one, dated February 13th, 2015. The day before Whitfield disappeared. She read it twice, her chest tightening with each sentence. "I know you're coming. I've known for weeks. The FBI is slow but not stupid. They've connected dots I thought I'd kept separate. And worse, the people I stole from, the ones who expected to profit alongside me, they figured out I betrayed them too. I'm a dead man either way. So I'm leaving this for whoever comes after me. The resort is yours. So is the headache that comes with it. The vault holds everything. $200 million in cash, give or take. But more importantly, evidence against everyone who helped me. Appraisers, bankers, contractors, all of them dirty, all of them complicit. If you're reading this, you probably need money. We all do. That's why I did this in the first place. Needed money, wanted more, couldn't stop taking it even when I had enough. The cash in this vault won't buy you happiness. Won't solve your problems. Will probably create worse ones. But the documents might do something my money never could. They might make things right. There are families I destroyed, people who trusted me with their savings, their futures. I have their names in the ledger marked victims. If you take the money, at least look at those names. At least know who you're stealing from twice." The letter ended there. No signature. No grand confession or apology. Just a thief's final words. Half warning, half challenge. Elena found the ledger he'd mentioned. It was smaller, separate from the business records. Inside, handwritten entries. Morrison family, retired teachers, invested $340,000 life savings. Lost everything. Chen family, restaurant owners, borrowed against business for $150,000 investment. Business foreclosed. Richard's couple, nurses, invested $200,000 inheritance. Amount recovered, $3,200. Page after page. 200 families. Over $60 million in personal investments. All gone. All stolen through Marcus Whitfield's schemes. These people weren't banks or corporations. They were teachers and nurses and restaurant owners who believed his promises, trusted his reputation, and lost everything while he filled a vault with cash. Elena sat on the concrete floor, that ledger in her hands, tears streaming down her face. She'd been broke for 6 years, had learned what it meant to survive on nothing, to make impossible choices, to feel the crushing weight of poverty. But she'd never lost everything at once, never had security ripped away by someone else's greed. These families had, and they'd never gotten justice, never gotten answers, never gotten their money back because Marcus Whitfield had hidden it in a mountain before disappearing forever. Now Elena held it all. The money that could change her life. The evidence that could change theirs. She couldn't have both. Either she took the cash and condemned 200 families to permanent loss, or she gave it up and went back to being broke, back to struggling, back to watching Mia wear shoes with holes. Unless there was a third way. Unless she could be smarter than Marcus Whitfield had been. Could use what she'd found not just for herself or just for others, but for something bigger. Something that didn't require choosing between her daughter's future and other people's justice. The idea formed slowly, dangerous and complicated. But sitting in that vault, surrounded by stolen money and documented crimes, Elena made a decision. She wasn't going to hide this. Wasn't going to take the cash and run. Wasn't going to stay silent. But she also wasn't going to just turn everything over to authorities and hope they'd protect her. She was going to use it. Use the evidence. Use the money. Use everything Marcus Whitfield had left behind to force the system to give these families justice while keeping herself and Mia alive in the process. It would require allies. Would require trust in strangers. Would require every ounce of courage she'd never known she had. But anything less would make her complicit. Make her another person who'd chosen self-interest over what was right. And Elena had spent 6 years surviving. She was tired of just surviving. It was time to fight. She climbed back upstairs, checked on Mia, who'd fallen asleep surrounded by crayon drawings of castles and princesses and mountains. Then she stood in the lobby, looking at her phone, at the messages from attorneys and investigators and people who wanted what she'd found. She selected one name, Thomas Brennan, the private investigator working for creditor families. If he was legitimate, if he really represented victims, he might be exactly the ally she needed. If he was dirty, if he was working for someone trying to recover the money for the wrong reasons, she'd know soon enough. She dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. "Miss Morales, thank you for calling me back." "Tell me exactly who you work for," Elena said, her voice steady despite her hammering heart. "And don't lie. I'll know." "Fair enough," Brennan replied. "I represent 43 families who were defrauded by Marcus Whitfield. Teachers, nurses, small business owners. People who invested life savings in his developments and lost everything. We've been trying to recover assets for 8 years. Mostly we've found nothing. Until you bought that resort. How do you know I found anything? Because 3 different groups of very nervous people have suddenly started moving. Making calls, sending attorneys, applying legal pressure. That only happens when something valuable is about to surface. And based on Whitfield's patterns, anything valuable would be at that resort." He paused. "I'm guessing you found more than a pretty building, Miss Morales." Elena made a decision. She'd trust him, or at least, she'd trust him enough to test him. "I found a vault," she said quietly, "with cash and documents. A lot of both. More than I can deal with alone. More than I can protect by myself." Brennan was silent for a long moment. Then, carefully, "How much cash?" $200 million. Give or take. Jesus. She heard him exhale sharply. "And documents? Everything. Every fraud. Every inflated cost. Every fake appraisal." Evidence against probably 50 people who helped him, including banks, appraisers, contractors. It's all there. Enough to recover funds for your clients, but also enough to get me killed if the wrong people find out I have it. Miss Morales, listen to me carefully. Brennan's voice was urgent now. You need protection. Federal protection. I can make calls, get FBI involved, have agents there within hours once the road's clear. This is too big for you to handle alone. No agents, Elena said firmly. Not yet. First, I need guarantees. I need to know that if I turn this over, the families you represent actually get restitution. I need legal protection for me and my daughter. And I need to know I'm not just handing evidence to people who'll bury it to protect powerful criminals. That's reasonable. What do you want from me? Information. Names of your clients. Documentation that you're legitimate. References I can check. If you're really representing victims, prove it. Then we'll talk about next steps. Brennan agreed immediately. Within an hour, he'd emailed files that Elena reviewed carefully. Client lists, legal filings, correspondence with victims. It all looked legitimate. The families were real, their losses documented. Brennan himself checked out. Former FBI agent turned private investigator, clean record, good reputation. She called him back. Okay, I believe you, but I'm not turning everything over to the FBI. Not until I have ironclad guarantees about what happens to the money and the evidence. Can you help with that? I can try. I have contacts at the Bureau, people I trust. But Miss Morales, you need to understand something. The moment you go public with this, powerful people will come after you. People who helped Whitfield, who profited from his schemes, who don't want this evidence exposed. Are you prepared for that? Elena thought about the men on snowmobiles, about the texts and calls and sudden interest in a property nobody had wanted for 8 years. About Mia sleeping upstairs, innocent and trusting. I'm a single mother who bought a ski resort with her rent money during a blizzard, she said quietly. I've been making bad decisions my whole life. Might as well make one that matters. Brennan laughed, surprised. All right then. Let's figure out how to keep you alive and get justice for people who've waited 8 years for it. First thing, we need to secure that evidence. Take photos. Upload everything to cloud storage, multiple locations. If something happens to you, if someone seizes the property, we need backups they can't destroy. Elena had already started that process. Already doing it. What else? We need to bring in a federal prosecutor I trust. Someone who can't be bought, who'll actually pursue this. And we need to document everything about threats you've received. Build a case for protection before we formally blow this open. They talked for 2 hours, planning, strategizing. Brennan knew the system, knew how to navigate it. Elena provided details about what she'd found, what evidence existed, what could be proven. By the time they hung up, she felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Not the desperate, grasping kind that had made her bid on this property, but something stronger. The hope that came from taking action, from choosing to fight instead of hide, from believing that maybe, just maybe, ordinary people could win against those with power and money and connections. The next 3 days were the strangest of Elena's life. Snowed in, isolated, she turned the resort into a war room. She photographed every document in the vault, uploaded everything to encrypted cloud storage Brennan had arranged. She researched the people named in Whitfield's records, building profiles of accomplices, understanding who'd helped him and who might be vulnerable to prosecution. Mia helped in small ways, unaware of the full scope. She organized papers Elena had printed, made labels for file boxes, created a color-coded system for tracking different aspects of the fraud. She thought they were just organizing the resort's old records. Elena let her believe that. On December 23rd, the county finally sent plows. By evening, the road was passable. Elena's phone rang as she was putting Mia to bed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her swipe to accept. Miss Morales. A man's voice, smooth, educated, dangerous. My name is Richard Sutton. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Elena's blood went cold. I don't know you. No, but you know my money. Marcus Whitfield stole it from me and several associates. We've been very patient, waiting for it to surface. Now that it has, we'd like it back. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you do. The vault, the cash, the documents. You spent 3 days photographing everything. Yes, we know. We've been monitoring. The question isn't whether you'll return what you found. The question is whether we have to take it, or whether you'll be reasonable. Elena's hands shook. You're threatening me. I'm offering you a way out. $5 million. Cash. Immediate transfer. You give us access to the vault. Walk away wealthy, no one gets hurt. Everyone wins. Except the families Whitfield defrauded. The people who lost everything. Sutton sighed. Whitfield stole from everyone, Miss Morales. From investors, from banks, from people like me who'd partnered with him on various ventures. The difference is, I have the means to recover what's mine. Those families don't. That's unfortunate, but not your problem. And if I refuse, then it becomes your problem. Your daughter's problem. You're isolated, Miss Morales. Alone in a building with no neighbors, no protection. The roads are clear now. We could be there in 2 hours. By morning, the vault would be empty, and you'd be gone. Another missing person case. Just like Whitfield. Is that what you want? Elena looked toward Mia's room, her daughter asleep and innocent. Every instinct screamed at her to take the deal, to accept the money to run. But she thought about the ledger, about the Morrison family who'd lost their life savings, about 200 families still waiting for justice. I already have protection, she lied. Federal agents. They know everything. You come here, you'll be arrested. No, you don't, Sutton said with absolute confidence. You've talked to Brennan, yes. An ex-agent with limited influence. You've uploaded files to cloud storage. Congratulations. But you haven't contacted the FBI officially. Haven't reported the vault. Haven't put yourself under federal protection because you know the moment you do that, you lose control. The government seizes everything and you get nothing. So, you're stalling, trying to figure out an angle. And that's fine. I respect the hustle. But time's up. You have 12 hours to decide. Accept my offer or face the consequences. The line went dead. Elena sat in the dark lobby, phone in her hand, terror and fury warring in her chest. He was right. She'd been stalling, trying to find a way to protect herself and Mia while still getting justice for the victims. But she was out of time. Sutton, and whoever he represented would come for the vault, would do whatever necessary to get it. She had 12 hours. She called Brennan. They contacted me. Richard Sutton. He knows about the vault, knows what I've been doing. He's giving me 12 hours to hand it over, or he's coming to take it. Brennan swore. Sutton. That name rang bells. I'll check my records, but I think he was one of Whitfield's early partners. Money laundering connections, organized crime ties, the kind of person you don't say no to. He's threatening to make me disappear. Like Whitfield. He probably killed Whitfield, Brennan said grimly. Or had him killed. Found out about the vault somehow but couldn't access it without drawing attention. Has been waiting 8 years for someone to buy the property and lead him to it. You did exactly that. Elena's stomach dropped. So what do I do? If I give him the vault, he gets away with everything. The families get nothing. If I don't, Mia and I are dead. There's a third option, Brennan said slowly. We go loud. Right now. Tonight. We release everything publicly. Every document, every piece of evidence. Blow this so wide open that Sutton can't touch you without the entire world watching. He'll still have the cash. 200 million in a vault I can't protect. True. But the evidence is what matters. The evidence is what can recover assets, put criminals in prison, get restitution for victims. The cash in the vault is just one piece. If we expose the whole network, freeze accounts, seize properties, we can recover more than what's hidden in your basement. Elena thought about it, her mind racing. If I go public, I become visible. Target. Forever. Yes. But you also become protected by that visibility. Harder to disappear someone when their story is everywhere. When people are watching, waiting to see what happens next. It was a gamble. Everything was a gamble. But she'd been gambling since the moment she raised her hand at that auction. Might as well go all in. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Let's burn it all down. What happened next would change everything. Would expose crimes decades old. Would force powerful people into the light they'd spent fortunes avoiding. would prove that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was trust that the truth, however dangerous, was stronger than the lies protecting it. Because Elena Morales, broke single mom who bought a ski resort for $1,500, was about to become the most dangerous person Richard Sutton had ever underestimated. And the clock was ticking. Brennan worked fast. Within 2 hours, he'd coordinated with 3 major news outlets, a federal prosecutor he trusted, and a whistleblower protection attorney. Elena spent those hours transferring every file, every photograph, every piece of evidence to multiple secure servers. She recorded a video statement, sitting in the resort lobby with Mia asleep upstairs, explaining everything she'd found, how she'd found it, and why she was coming forward. "My name is Elena Morales," she said into her phone's camera, hands shaking but voice steady. "3 days ago, I bought an abandoned ski resort for $1,500. I was desperate, broke, trying to give my daughter a chance. What I found underneath changed everything. $200 million in cash, evidence of fraud that destroyed hundreds of families, and proof that powerful people have been hiding this for 8 years, willing to kill to keep it secret. By the time you see this, I've probably made a lot of enemies, but I'd rather make enemies than look my daughter in the eye someday and tell her I chose safety over doing what was right." She uploaded the video along with sample documents at exactly 11:47 p.m. on December 23rd. Brennan had coordinated the release across multiple platforms simultaneously: news websites, social media, encrypted drop sites used by journalists. Within minutes, the story began to spread. By midnight, Elena's phone was ringing constantly. Reporters, lawyers, federal agents. She ignored most of them, following Brennan's instructions to speak only with the contacts he'd vetted. The federal prosecutor, a woman named Sarah Chun, who'd made her career taking down white-collar criminals, called at 12:23 a.m. "Miss Morales, this is Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Chun. I've reviewed the documents you released. If they're authentic, this is the largest fraud case I've seen in a decade. I need you to understand what you've just triggered. The people implicated in these files will fight back with everything they have. Legal teams, media campaigns, threats. Are you prepared for that?" "No," Elena admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." "Good, because we need to move fast. I'm requesting immediate federal protection for you and your daughter. Marshals will be at your location within 3 hours. In the meantime, do not let anyone into that building. Do not open the vault. Do not touch anything. It's all evidence now." After the call, Elena checked the news on her laptop. The story was everywhere. Single mother exposes $200 million fraud. Abandoned resort holds evidence of decade-long scheme. Whistleblower faces death threats after revealing ski resort vault. The articles included her name, her photo from social media, details about Mia. Elena's hands clenched. She'd known visibility was protection, but seeing their lives splashed across the internet made it real, made it terrifying. Richard Sutton called at 1:15 a.m. Elena let it go to voicemail. His message was brief and chilling. "You made a mistake, Miss Morales. A very expensive mistake. Sleep well." She didn't sleep at all. She sat in the lobby with a fire poker across her lap, watching the windows, listening for engines or footsteps or any sign that Sutton was coming despite the publicity. The federal marshals arrived at 3:47 a.m., 4 of them in 2 black SUVs that had no trouble with the snowy roads. The lead marshal, a compact woman named Diana Reyes, did a sweep of the building before even introducing herself. "Clear," she finally said, "but your security here is non-existent. Anyone could have walked in. We're moving you and your daughter to a secure location immediately." "What about the vault?" Elena asked. "What about the evidence?" "FBI forensic accountants will be here at dawn. They'll document everything, secure it, begin the process of tracing funds. Your part is done. Now we keep you alive while the legal machinery does its work." Elena woke Mia gently, whispered that they were going on another trip, tried to make it sound normal. Her daughter, sleep-dazed and confused, clutched her bear and let herself be bundled into warm clothes. They left the resort as the sun was rising, turning the snow-covered peaks brilliant gold and pink. Elena looked back at the massive building, at the place that had been shelter and danger and transformation all at once, wondering if she'd ever see it again. The marshals took them to a safe house in Boulder, 2 hours away, a bland suburban home that could have been anywhere. It had reinforced doors, panic rooms, and armed agents stationed outside 24/7. For the first week, Elena and Mia barely left. They watched the news coverage explode. Marcus Whitfield's fraud had been bigger than anyone knew. The evidence Elena found led to 53 arrests in the first 10 days. Bankers who'd falsified appraisals, contractors who'd inflated invoices, investors who'd knowingly participated in the scheme. Richard Sutton was arrested on December 27th while trying to board a private plane to Belize. The news showed him in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled, his face red with rage. He'd been one of Whitfield's original partners, had helped set up the offshore accounts, had taken a cut of every fraudulent deal. When the scheme had started to unravel, he'd killed Whitfield to keep him quiet and spent 8 years searching for the vault. Now he'd spend the next 30 years in prison. But the victory felt hollow. Elena watched the arrests and indictments on television, isolated from the world, living in a house that wasn't hers, unable to work, unable to give Mia anything resembling normal life. The money from the vault had been seized as evidence. The resort was tied up in federal proceedings. She had nothing except the protection of armed strangers and the growing knowledge that visibility hadn't made her safe, just visible. January dragged into February. Elena testified before grand juries, met with federal prosecutors, signed so many affidavits and depositions that her hand cramped. Mia fell behind in school, unable to attend regularly, taught by tutors the marshals arranged. She stopped drawing castles and started drawing houses with normal walls, asking when they could go home, not understanding they didn't have a home anymore. Sarah Chin visited in mid-February with news. We've frozen assets worth over $400 million. Properties, offshore accounts, corporate holdings. It's going to take years to liquidate and distribute to victims, but restitution is coming. The families on Whitfield's list will get something back. Maybe not everything, but something. What about me? Elena asked quietly. What do I get? Sarah hesitated. The resort is still yours legally, but it's evidence in multiple cases. We'll be tied up for at least 2 years, probably longer. You can't sell it, can't access it, can't do anything with it. And there are liens from creditors, claims from victims who want the property as part of restitution. You might end up with nothing. So I gave up everything for nothing. Sarah's expression softened. You gave up safety for justice. That's not nothing. The families who lost money are getting it back because of you. Criminals are in prison because of you. That matters. Does it matter to my daughter? Because she's 9 years old and living in a safe house, being guarded by strangers, can't see her friends or go to her real school or have anything normal. What does justice matter when it costs her childhood? Sarah had no answer for that. After she left, Elena sat in the bland living room of the safe house and cried for the first time since finding the vault. She thought she was being brave, thought she was doing the right thing. But right for whom? The 200 families in Whitfield's ledger would get restitution eventually. Richard Sutton and his accomplices would face consequences. The system would grind forward toward justice. But Elena and Mia paid the price. Paid it in isolation, in fear, in the loss of every small stability they'd managed to build. On March 1st, Diana Reyes came to Elena with unusual news. There's someone here to see you. Anna Martinez. Says she was one of Whitfield's victims, that you know her from the vault records. Elena's heart jumped. I never met her. I just read about her family in the ledger. Well, she tracked you down through the prosecutor's office. Drove 6 hours to get here. She wants to thank you. Diana paused. She brought others. 43 people. All from the victims list. They're outside. Elena went to the window and looked out. The suburban street was lined with cars. People stood in small clusters, bundled against the late winter cold. Old couples, middle-aged parents, a few younger adults who must have been children when Whitfield destroyed their family's finances. They held signs, not protesting, just displaying messages. Thank you, Elena. Justice after 8 years. You gave us hope. Diana unlocked the door. Elena stepped out onto the porch, Mia beside her, staring at the unexpected crowd. An older woman separated from the group and approached slowly. She was small, maybe 65, with kind eyes that had seen grief. "Miss Morales," she said softly, "I'm Anna Martinez. My daughter Isabella died because Whitfield's foundation promised help that never came. For 8 years, I've lived with the knowledge that no one would be held accountable, that the money stolen from us would stay hidden forever. You changed that." "I didn't mean to," Elena said, her voice breaking. "I was just trying to survive. I found that vault by accident." "There are no accidents," Anna said firmly. "You found it because you needed to. Because we needed you to. Because sometimes the universe puts the right person in the right place at the exact right moment." She gestured to the crowd behind her. "We all lost something to Marcus Whitfield. Money, security, loved ones. We've been invisible for 8 years. Now, because of you, people know what happened. The money's coming back. The criminals are in prison. You gave us something more valuable than restitution. You gave us acknowledgement that what happened to us mattered." Other people came forward, one by one, sharing their stories. The Morrison family, retired teachers who'd invested their pension. The Chin family, whose restaurant had closed when their investment disappeared. The Richards, nurses who'd worked double shifts for years to rebuild what they'd lost. Each of them thanked Elena, some with tears, some with quiet dignity, all of them carrying the weight of years spent waiting for justice that had finally arrived. "We heard you lost everything too," Anna said. "That you're stuck here, that the resort is tied up, that you can't work or move on. That's not right. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your life for ours." "What choice did I have?" Elena asked. "The money was stolen. The evidence needed to come out. You had lots of choices. You could have taken the cash and run. Could have stayed silent. Could have accepted Sutton's offer. You chose the hard way because it was the right way. That deserves more than hiding in a safe house." Anna pulled an envelope from her coat. "We took up a collection. All of us. The 43 families Thomas Brennan represents. We pooled what we could, given that most of us are still struggling. It's not much, but it's something." She handed Elena the envelope. Inside was a check for $127,000. Elena stared at it, unable to process. "We can't take this. You're the victims. You're the ones who lost everything. And we're getting restitution. Eventually. Enough to make a difference. This is different. This is gratitude. This is making sure that doing the right thing doesn't leave you destitute." Anna's voice was firm. "Take it. Use it to start over. Get an apartment. Enroll your daughter in school. Build the life you deserve. Let us give you back a fraction of what you gave us." Elena's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the porch steps, clutching the check, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. Mia wrapped her arms around her mother's neck, and Anna sat beside them, the stranger who understood grief and gratitude in equal measure. The crowd stayed for an hour, sharing food they'd brought, telling stories, creating community in a moment that should have been isolated. When they finally left, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in months: connection. Purpose beyond mere survival. That night, she called Sarah Chin. "I want to do something with the resort, assuming I ever get control of it back. Something that matters." "What did you have in mind?" Sarah asked. "A resource center. For fraud victims, families who've lost money to scams and schemes. A place where people can get help navigating restitution claims, connect with others who've been through it, find support." Whitfield tried to create something beautiful and filled it with lies. "I want to take what he built and turn it into something that actually helps people." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "That's ambitious. And expensive. The building needs serious work. You'd need funding, staff, legal framework." "I know. But I also know the story. The national coverage means attention, means donations, means people who want to help. And I have something Whitfield never had. I have credibility. I have proof that I chose victims over profit. That matters to people." Over the next 6 months, Elena built her plan. The safe house restrictions eased as the immediate threats passed. Sutton and his closest associates were behind bars awaiting trial. The others had scattered or taken plea deals. Elena moved with Mia to Denver, to a small apartment she could afford with the money from the victims' fund, and started building something new. She used her unexpected platform to fundraise, did interviews explaining her vision for the resort, how it could become a place of healing and practical help for people destroyed by financial fraud. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from people who'd followed her story, from fraud victims nationwide who wanted to contribute, from foundations focused on financial justice. By July, she'd raised $2 million. By September, $4 million. The federal cases ground forward slowly, but Sarah Chen worked with Elena's attorneys to negotiate something unprecedented. The resort would be transferred to a nonprofit Elena founded, taking it out of the restitution pool in exchange for its use as a victim resource center. Creditors accepted the arrangement, seeing more value in the positive publicity than in forcing a sale of a property that had become symbolically important. On December 24th, exactly 1 year after she'd found the vault, Elena returned to Whispering Pines with Mia and a small crew of volunteers. The marshals no longer followed her everywhere. The death threats had dwindled to occasional angry messages from people who thought she should have kept the money. Life wasn't normal, would never be normal, but it was hers. The resort had been winterized properly, systems repaired, damage from abandonment addressed with the fundraised money. It would officially open as the Whitfield Accountability Center in the spring, but tonight, Elena wanted to spend Christmas Eve where everything had changed. She and Mia walked through the lobby, now cleaned and restored, the massive fireplace roaring with warmth. The furniture had been replaced, the dust removed, the building transformed from abandoned ruin to functioning space. "It looks different," Mia said, spinning slowly to take it all in. "Like it's alive again." "It is alive," Elena agreed. "Or it will be. When people start coming here, when we start helping families put their lives back together. This place will mean something again." They went down to the basement, to the vault that had started everything. It was empty now, the money seized, the documents cataloged and copied and used in dozens of prosecutions. But Elena had left one thing, a plaque on the wall listing every family from Whitfield's victims' ledger. Isabella Martinez, age 8. Thomas Williams, age 11. David Chun, age 6. All the children who died while Whitfield hoarded money meant for their treatment. All the families who'd lost everything while he built his fortune on lies. "We remember," the plaque concluded simply. That night, they slept in the manager's office, the same room where they'd spent their first terrifying night. But it felt different now. Safe. Purposeful. Home, or something like it. Christmas morning came bright and cold. Elena had hidden small presents for Mia throughout the building. A treasure hunt that ended at a renovated second-floor room. The corner room Mia had claimed that first day. Elena had spent months working on it secretly, turning it into a proper bedroom. Fresh paint, new furniture, decorations Mia had picked from catalogs. A space that was hers. "We're staying," Mia asked, eyes wide. "We're really staying." "The nonprofit owns the building," Elena explained. "I'm the director, which means I manage it, live here, oversee the programs. You'll go to school in town, make friends, have a normal life. But this will be home. Our castle. For real this time." Mia threw her arms around her mother's waist. Best Christmas ever. It wasn't actually. Christmas would never be simple again, never be just joy without the shadow of everything they'd been through. But it was good. Better than good. It was earned. The months that followed were harder than Elena expected. Running a nonprofit was different from her fantasies. Endless paperwork, grant applications, legal compliance. She hired staff gradually, starting with a case manager who'd been a fraud victim herself, then a financial counselor, then administrative help. The programs developed slowly. Support groups for families dealing with financial trauma. Legal aid clinics to help navigate complex restitution claims. Educational workshops on recognizing scams. A memorial garden dedicated to those who died because of financial fraud, not just Whitfield's victims, but all victims. Elena worked 16-hour days, learning as she went, making mistakes and fixing them. It wasn't glamorous. Most days she felt overwhelmed, underprepared, certain she'd fail. But families started coming. Slowly at first, then steadily. People who'd been defrauded by other schemes, other criminals, finding in Whispering Pines a community that understood, a place where their pain was acknowledged and their recovery supported. Anna Martinez became a regular volunteer, helping in the memorial garden, sharing her story with new arrivals. The Morrison family donated their recovered restitution money to the center's operations, wanting to pay forward the help they'd received. Other victims from the Whitfield case followed suit, creating an endowment that would sustain the center for years. By the center's first anniversary, they'd helped 143 families navigate restitution claims, winning settlements totaling $18 million. They provided counseling to over 300 people dealing with financial trauma. They'd educated thousands through workshops and online resources. The metrics were impressive, but Elena measured success differently. She measured it in the woman who smiled for the first time in 5 years after recovering her stolen inheritance. In the teenager who could afford college because the center helped his family fight back. In the elderly couple who didn't have to spend their final years in poverty because someone had finally held a fraudster accountable. The prosecutions from the Whitfield case continued for years. Richard Sutton was convicted in March 2027, receiving 35 years for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. Marcus Whitfield's body was never found, but evidence suggested he'd been killed the night he disappeared, buried somewhere in the mountains he tried to make his fortress. 53 people were ultimately convicted in connection with the scheme. Asset recovery exceeded $600 million, one of the largest in federal history. Restitution checks went out in waves over 3 years, never making victims whole but giving them back something, acknowledging their loss, providing the means to rebuild. Elena testified at multiple trials, her story becoming a cautionary tale about greed and a redemptive tale about courage in equal measure. She was offered book deals, movie rights, speaking engagements. She turned down most of them, accepting only what directly benefited the center or other fraud victims. On the second anniversary of finding the vault, PBS aired a documentary called The Accidental Whistleblower. It traced Elena's journey from desperate single mother to nonprofit director, interviewed the families she'd helped, showed the transformed resort. The publicity brought another wave of donations and volunteers. It also brought her father back into her life. He called after seeing the documentary, the first time she'd heard from him in 12 years. "I saw what you did," he said. "What you built. I'm proud of you, Mija." Elena felt nothing. No anger, no joy, just the hollow acknowledgement of timing. "Where were you when I needed you? When Mia was born, when my ex left, when I was working 3 jobs to survive. I was selfish," he admitted. "I was a coward. I'm calling to apologize, not to ask for forgiveness I don't deserve. But I wanted you to know I saw you do something I never had the courage to do. Stand up. Fight back. Choose what's right over what's easy." They talked for an hour, not reconciling exactly, but finding something like peace. Elena didn't need his pride anymore, had learned to be proud of herself. But hearing him acknowledge what she'd accomplished helped close a wound she'd carried for years. Mia thrived. She made friends in town, joined the school choir, stopped having nightmares about men on snowmobiles. She still drew pictures, but now they were of real places, real people, the center and its visitors and the mountains that had become home. On her 11th birthday, she asked her mother, "Do you wish we'd never bought this place? That we'd just stayed poor and safe?" Elena thought about it honestly. "I wish we could have stayed safe. I wish you hadn't had to live in fear, hadn't had to lose your childhood to federal marshals and death threats. But I don't wish we'd stayed silent. Because 200 families got justice. Because this center exists. Because you learn something about standing up that will shape who you become." She pulled Mia close. "We didn't buy a ski resort, baby. We bought a choice. And we made the right one even though it cost us everything. That's something to be proud of." 3 years after finding the vault, Elena was invited to speak at a victims' rights conference in Washington, D.C. She almost declined, uncomfortable with attention, preferring the quiet work of running the center. But Thomas Brennan, who'd become a friend and board member, convinced her to accept. "Your story matters," he said. "Not because it's dramatic, but because it's real. You show people that ordinary individuals can fight systems that seem unbeatable. That choosing courage over self-interest isn't just moral, it's possible. People need to hear that." She spoke to an audience of 300 victim advocates, attorneys, law enforcement, survivors of various frauds. She told the truth, all of it. The desperation that made her bid on an impossible property. The terror when she found the vault. The temptation to take the money and run. The decision to fight instead. The cost of that decision. "I'm not a hero," she concluded. I'm a person who made one good choice after a lifetime of bad ones, who got lucky that the good choice happened to matter. But here's what I learned. The system is designed to protect the powerful. It works best for those who can afford lawyers and lobbyists and time. But sometimes, if you're loud enough, if you refuse to go away, if you make yourself impossible to ignore, you can force that system to work for everyone else too. Not easily, not perfectly, but possible. The standing ovation surprised her. Afterward, dozens of people approached with their stories, their struggles, their need for hope that fighting back mattered. She listened to each one, took contact information, promised to share resources. On the flight back to Colorado, Elena looked out at the mountains below and felt something close to peace. She'd never be rich. The center would always struggle for funding, always face challenges. Mia would carry scars from their year of hiding. Elena herself had nightmares still, woke up sometimes convinced she heard snowmobiles outside. But they'd survived. More than survived. They'd built something meaningful from chaos and fear. Had turned a ski resort built on fraud into a place of healing and accountability. Had proven that sometimes the smallest voices, when raised at the right moment, could echo louder than money and power and threats. Marcus Whitfield had hidden $200 million in a mountain, thinking it would keep him safe. It hadn't. The money had been his downfall, had left a trail that exposed everything he tried to bury. Elena had found that money, that evidence, that secret, and made a different choice. Not safety through silence, but protection through transparency. Not wealth through theft, but purpose through sacrifice. As the plane descended toward Denver, toward the mountains that held whispering pines and everything it represented, Elena pulled out her phone and looked at photos. Mia laughing in the memorial garden. Anna Martinez hugging a crying widow who just received her restitution check. The center staff celebrating their 100th successful case. A building that had been abandoned and cursed, now full of life and hope. She paid $1,500 for all of it, the best investment she'd ever made. Not because of financial return, though the nonprofit paid her a modest salary, but because she'd learned what she was capable of when everything was on the line. Had discovered that courage wasn't the absence of fear but the choice to act despite it. Had proven that ordinary people, broke and desperate and powerless, could still change things when they refused to stay silent. The ski resort rose from the snowy landscape as their car approached from the airport, Brennan driving, Mia asleep in the back seat. It looked different than it had that Christmas Eve 3 years ago when Elena had first seen it through blizzard and desperation. Still massive, still imposing, but no longer abandoned. Lights glowed in the windows. Cars filled the parking lot. People moved through spaces that had been empty for 8 years. "You did good, Fletcher," Brennan said quietly, using the nickname he'd adopted. "Better than good. You took something broken and made it matter." "We did," Elena corrected. "None of this happens without you, without Sarah, without the families who believed in the mission. I just found the vault." "No, you did more than that. You chose what to do with what you found. That's the hard part. That's the part that matters." They pulled up to the entrance. Elena helped Mia from the car, both of them trudging through snow to the massive doors that no longer felt ominous, just familiar. Home. Inside, the lobby was filled with people, a support group meeting in one area, a legal clinic in another, staff members working at desks, volunteers organizing materials. It was chaotic and beautiful, and exactly what a building this size should be, alive with purpose. Elena checked in with her assistant, reviewed the day's schedule, responded to urgent emails. Normal work, boring and essential. The kind of work that changed lives through paperwork and persistence rather than dramatic revelations. Mia disappeared into the back office to do homework, comfortable in a routine that had taken years to establish but now felt solid. That evening, after the day's visitors had left and the staff had gone home, Elena did what she did every night. She walked down to the basement, to the empty vault that had started everything. She stood in the space where $200 million had once sat, where evidence of massive fraud had been hidden, where Marcus Whitfield's desperate attempt at protection had waited for someone to find it. The shelves were empty now. The safe held only old files, the victim's ledger she kept as a reminder. But the space felt full. Full of the lives changed, the justice served, the families helped. Full of meaning earned through choice and sacrifice. She touched the plaque on the wall, ran her fingers over the engraved names. Isabella Martinez, Thomas Williams, all the children who died while money that could have saved them sat locked in darkness. They hadn't gotten justice in life, but they had it now. Their names remembered, their losses acknowledged, their deaths meaning something beyond tragedy. I did my best, Elena whispered to the empty vault, to the ghosts of victims, to Marcus Whitfield's cowardice and her own courage. It wasn't perfect, wasn't enough, but it was everything I had. She climbed back upstairs, checked on Mia doing homework, made dinner in the industrial kitchen that now fed support group participants and volunteers. They ate together at a small table in the manager's office, talking about Mia's day at school, her choir concert next week, normal life carved from impossible circumstances. After Mia went to bed, Elena sat in the lobby by the fire and opened her laptop. An email from Sarah Chun. 3 more convictions from the Whitfield case. Smaller fish finally caught in the net. Restitution checks going out next month to another 40 families. Justice, slow but inexorable, grinding forward. An email from Anna Martinez. The Memorial Garden's spring planting schedule, volunteers signed up to help. A donor contributing funds for a fountain in Isabella's memory. Healing, incremental and incomplete, but real. An email from a woman in Ohio who just found out her financial advisor had been running a Ponzi scheme. I saw your documentary. Can your center help? I don't know where else to turn. Elena responded immediately, providing resources, making connections, doing the work that didn't make headlines but changed individual lives. This was her life now. Not hiding from threats or counting cash in secret vaults, but doing boring, essential work in public. Running budgets and hiring staff and writing grants and sitting with crying strangers who needed someone to tell them they weren't alone, that fighting back was possible, that justice might be slow but wasn't dead. She bought a ski resort for $1,500 during a blizzard. Found $200 million in cash and evidence of massive fraud. Made choices that cost her safety and anonymity and any chance at normal life. And she'd do it all again. Every terrifying moment, every impossible decision, every night lying awake wondering if men on snowmobiles would come back. Because the alternative was Marcus Whitfield's choice. Hiding, running, dying with secrets intact and victims forgotten. Elena had chosen differently. Had chosen to be loud when silence was safer, to fight when surrender was easier, to believe that truth mattered more than comfort. It had cost her everything, and given her back something worth having. The knowledge that she'd stood at a crossroads between self-interest and justice, and chosen right even when it destroyed her. That night, she dreamed of snow. Not the terrifying blizzard of that first drive, but gentle flakes falling on mountains, covering the resort in clean white silence. In the dream, she walked through the building seeing it as it had been and as it was now. Abandoned then vital. Empty then full. Cursed then blessed. Marcus Whitfield appeared in the dream, not as a ghost but as a memory. He looked at what she'd built and nodded once. Acknowledgement from a man who'd lacked her courage, who'd hidden instead of fighting, who died protecting money that meant nothing once he was gone. You finished what I couldn't start, he said in the dream. Made my failure mean something. Elena woke before dawn. Mia still sleeping, the resort quiet around her. She dressed warmly and walked outside into early winter darkness. The mountains rose above her, black shapes against a sky just beginning to pale. Somewhere up there, maybe, Marcus Whitfield's bones lay buried. Or maybe he'd been disposed of more thoroughly, vanished completely. It didn't matter. His story had ended in violence and fear. Hers was still being written, still unfolding in choices made daily to help rather than hide, to build rather than bury. She heard a car approaching, headlights cutting through the dawn. Too early for staff or visitors. Her body tensed automatically, old instincts from the year of threats. But it was just a delivery truck, bringing supplies for the week's programs. Normal life, mundane and precious. The driver waved. Elena waved back. The sun broke over the peaks, turning snow to gold, and Elena Morales, who bought an abandoned ski resort for $1,500 and found $200 million hidden in its depths, walked back inside to start another day of boring, essential world-changing work. Because that's what justice looked like. Not dramatic confrontations or movie endings, but the slow, patient work of rebuilding what criminals had destroyed. One family at a time, one day at a time, one choice at a time. And sometimes, when the work felt overwhelming and the problems felt endless, she'd remember that first terrible night. The blizzard and the fear and the massive building that seemed like both shelter and trap. The decision to walk down into that vault instead of running. The choice to expose rather than hide. She'd been broke and desperate then. Still was in some ways. But she'd learned what she was worth, had discovered that value wasn't measured in dollars found but in courage chosen. That the greatest treasure wasn't hidden in vaults but built through sacrifice. That sometimes the best investment you could make was betting everything on being brave enough to do what's right even when right was terrifying. The ski resort stood behind her, no longer abandoned or cursed, just present and purposeful. A building that had been built on lies, had hidden stolen wealth, had been Marcus Whitfield's monument to greed. Now it was Elena's testament to something different. To the stubborn insistence that truth mattered, that victims deserved justice, that ordinary people could extraordinary things when circumstances demanded it. She looked back once more at the mountains catching light, at the resort that had changed her life, at the world that still held darkness, but also held the possibility of people brave enough to fight it. Then she went inside, made coffee, woke her daughter, and started another day of proving that sometimes the smallest voice, raised at the right moment in the right way, could echo loud enough to change everything. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love the story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.